Good morning, everyone. We are now up to Perek Gimel, Mishnah Gimel. A quick introduction. We learned previously that you are not allowed to take off a truma from someone else's produce, even if you're doing it for them. If it's not your produce, and the person didn't give you permission or hire you, so to speak, ask you to do it for him, make you his agent to do it, you're not able to do it. So that's the first thing that we have to recall. And today's Mishnah is really going to talk about the following scenario, and that is you have partners, people who own produce together, which means one person owns half, the other person owns half. Can one partner separate truma from the other partner? In order to be able to say that, we have to presume that the other partner is okay with his partner taking off truma for him. Because again, you can't just do it without some kind of consent, or at least a presumed consent that the other person would want you to do it, would agree for you to do it. If we can presume that he would agree for you to do it, you become his agent, and then you can do it for him. But that's what this discussion is going to surround. Is going to be surrounding around. Base is this idea where you have the partners. Can we presume that one partner consents for the other partner to separate truma for him? Because don't forget, they each own half. Each one has to separate truma from his half. Can we presume that the other person gives consent to his partner to separate truma on his part? Now, the Yerushalmi, the Jerusalem Talmud, points out that the scenario of our Mishnah is the following. If we know, if it's clear to us, or it's clear to one partner, we'll call it Reuven and Shimon. If it's clear to Shimon that Reuven is proficient in the laws of separating truma and meiser, right? If we know that he is proficient in the laws of separating trumas and meisers, so then for sure we can presume that his partner is okay. If Reuven is proficient in the laws of separating trumas and meisers, that's known to everyone. It's known, at least for sure, that we know it's known to his partner. So then his partner, Shimon, no question, consents for him to separate the trumas and meisers. If, let's say, Reuven is not proficient in separating trumas and meisers, then we presume that Shimon is not going to consent to Reuven separating for his part. If Reuven isn't proficient in the laws of doing this, then we don't. If Shimon were to tell him to do it is one thing, but we don't have Shimon telling him to do it. We have to presume that he would allow him to do it, and we don't have the conditions for that. If Reuven is not proficient in separating trumas and meisers, then we cannot presume. Then we have no way of presuming. We have no way of knowing any consent from Shimon. There's no way of presuming that Shimon would consent to that. And therefore, without being able to presume his consent, we don't have it. And therefore, it won't work. So in a case where Reuven, the partner, was separating truma for both, in a case where he is proficient in the laws of trumas and meisers, we can presume that Shimon is okay. He consents to his doing it. By that presumption, we consider Reuven his agent, and therefore the halacha is that the truma will count for all the grain, for both sides, for both partners. If Reuven is not proficient in the laws of trumas and meisers, then we cannot presume that Shimon consents to Reuven separating truma, and if we don't have his official consent and we can't presume his consent, we don't have it, and therefore it wouldn't work. And if, let's say, after this, Reuven, who is not proficient, would separate the trumas and meisers, and then Shimon said, "Oh, that was a good idea. I'm happy with the fact that he did it." It's not going to work. If we don't have his consent to start off with, later on telling us he consents is not going to help. Okay, so what? But our Mishnah is going to have an argument, and our Mishnah is a case where basically Reuven is an unknown, right? Each partner, let's put it this way, as we see in the case, but the partner who is separating the truma, he is unknown about his proficiency. It's unknown how proficient he is. And therefore, the question is, when we don't have the conditions to know that he's proficient, or the conditions to know that he's not proficient, what can we presume about the other partner? Can we presume the other partner is agreeable or not. I mean, basically, is the other partner going to be okay as long as we don't know that he's not proficient, right? If we don't know that he's not proficient, can we assume that that situation, the partner consents to his other partner separating Trumas and Maasros? Or no, do we say that we have to know that the other person is proficient in order to say that the partner consents? And therefore, that's going to be the argument here in our Mishnah that we're about to read. So, Hashutafin Shatarmu Za'achar Zeh. Now, in this case, the Mishnah lays out the case that the partners separated Truma one after the other. So there were 50 bushels of grain, and there were Reuben and Shimon were partners, which means each one owns half. Reuben goes and separates one, let's say one sa'ah. It was it was 50 sa'ah. He separated. Let's not get into that exactly right. Well, let's for our cases keep it simple. You have 50 sa'ah of grain. Reuben goes over and separates 1/50th, which would be the average amount of truma that should be taken. So he goes out and he separates a full sa'ah, a sa'ah of the 50 sa'ah as truma. Now, if he's taking a whole sa'ah, that means that he's actually separating a truma, or he intends to separate a truma for his part and his partner's part. The case is, though, that his partner didn't realize that Shimon didn't realize that Reuven separated truma, and he went in and he separated truma. He did the same thing without knowing that his friend did it. He also separated a full 1/50th out of this, intending that he would cover both of them. So here we have a case where each one separated truma. Now, if the second partner, the second one who separated truma, if he consents to the first ones, and the first one's truma, the second one's nothing. If we don't have consent here, then each one can only separate truma for his part, which means that the sa'ah of truma that I separated, that's the first partner separated, if we don't have the consent of the second partner, then half of that sa'ah is going to be truma, because I own half of the grain, so I can do for my part. But it comes out that now that what I separated, the sa'ah that I separated, is going to be part truma and part chulin. It's going to be a mixture. You can't know which part is chulin, which part is truma. But that's going to be what's going to come out. If we have consent, the first truma is a truma for everything, and the second truma is nothing. If we don't have consent, then each one's separation of truma, half of it is truma, half of it would be chulin, meaning it would be at least chulin to the point that you don't need truma from it, because at the end of the day, the other partner separated truma for his half. At the very least, that's what's happening, and therefore half of it is for sure the truma is taken care of. But that's going to be that's the question over here. Now, if the second partner would have known that the first partner separated truma for both of them, and he still went ahead and separated an amount that covers the whole thing, then it's clear he's not happy with the first person did. That's clear. But here the case is he didn't know. He didn't know that the first person did it. So now, and again, the case here is that Reuven, that each one basically, it's not clear how proficient they are when it comes to separating Trumas and Maasros. And since it's not clear, we don't have the definite conditions to know, does the partner consent to his partner separating Truma or not. So now the Mishnah says, Hashutafin shetarmu zeh achar zeh, partners who separated Truma one after the other. Rabbi Akiva says, Trumas shnehem Truma. Both the Trumas of each person is Truma. That means that in this case, Rabbi Akiva is saying, we cannot presume consent. When Reuven separated his Truma, he did not have a consent of his partner. So what he separated turns out to be half Truma. When Shimon goes ahead and he separates his Truma, basically he's only separating Truma for his half, because Reuven's Truma separation didn't work for his half, and he's only separating Truma from his half. The other half is already taken care of. The other half that's owned by Reuven, his partner, has already been taken care of by Reuven. So according to Rabbi Akiva, both of their Trumas are Truma, but in actuality, they're both not Truma fully. Each one is half Truma. And we don't know which half is the Truma or not. We have a mixture here. If it's half and half, then we don't have 100 times more. And therefore, what's going to happen is we have a mixture of grain that truma has been separated from and grain that truma hasn't been separated from. And at the end of the day, in that kind of situation, what we do is we go ahead and we give it to, we sell it, we give it to the Kohen. We go ahead and we give it to the Kohen. Because we don't know, in each truma, we don't know which part is truma, which part is not truma. So we give it to the Kohen. He'll have to pay for the other half, for half of it that's not truma. And then he'll have both of those trumas. At the same time, in this case, where the Kohen is getting these trumas, and half of what he's getting is chulin, in the sense that truma doesn't have to be separated from it anymore because both of them separated truma. So at the end of the day, each one's portion has been covered. But again, since each one took a full sa'ah, half of it is truma, half of it is not truma. Well, the other half that's not truma still needs maasros to be separated from it. And it's going to be the kohen who's going to have to take care of that. He's getting the truma. Maasros were not separated from the chulin that came together with his truma. And therefore, meaning the part that truma has been separated from, that's covered for truma, it's not covered for maasros, not covered for maasros yet. And each portion, and each one of the trumas is going to him. So he's going to have to go ahead and cover the maasros. And when he covers the maasros, he's going to have to try to cover it from some other grain that maasros hasn't been taken from, because he can't take it from any one of these trumas that he got, because he doesn't know which half of it is truma, which half of it is not truma. If he separates truma from each one of those trumas, if he separates maasros rather from half of the trumas that he got, maybe the half he's separating from is truma. Truma, you don't have to separate maaser from. That would turn out that he's separating from something that's not obligated with something that is obligated. So when he has to cover the maaser for the other half, he's going to have to cover it from other grain that maasros haven't been taken from. Okay. So that is the first opinion of Rabbi Akiva, that he says both of their trumas are truma. I remember the Chachamim say trumas harish and truma. The first one's trumas truma. That means the Chachamim say that in a situation where we don't know of Reuven, the first partner's proficiency, we can assume that as long as we don't know that he's not proficient, that his partner, we can presume that his partner agrees to his partner's having truma for both of them, and therefore the first truma was a truma for everybody's grain, for both partners' grain, and the second truma is nothing because truma has already been separated from this. Rabbi Yosi says. Now, what Rabbi Yosi is about to say, the commentaries speak out, is a qualification of the Chachamim. It's not arguing on the Chachamim; it's qualifying what the Chachamim say. That which Chachamim said, that we say that the partner consents to his partner separating truma for everyone's grain. Rabbi Yosi says, "Im taram harishon kashir, ein trumas hasheni truma." If the first one separates truma appropriately, according to the proper amount, then his truma is the good truma. That means his partner then consented for truma to be taken from his part also, and therefore the second truma isn't truma. The imlay tam harishon kashir, but if the first one did not separate truma according to the proper amount, trumas hasheni truma, the second one's truma will be truma. Meaning then in that case, the Chachamim will agree that the partner does not consent to his partner separating truma, and therefore each one's truma is a truma, and each one's truma is half truma, as we had in Rabbi Akiva's opinion. Now, what does it mean here when it says if the first one separated according to the proper amount? So the first explanation of the Bartanura is that when when it comes to separating truma, how much truma do we have to separate from our grain for the Kohen? According to Torah law, any amount. You can give one grain, one kernel of grain, that'll be enough. The Chachamim, though, said the average person, meaning what you should do, is a 50th of your grain. If you're generous, 60th. If you're stingy, a 40th. But that's the amount the Chachamim said. The Chachamim made a range that you have to do between a 40th and a 60th. But they classified it. The 40th is stingy. The 50th is the middle one. A A 60th is stingy, 50th the middle one, and a 40th is going to be the one that is generous. Now, so what the Mishnah means is like this: that according to the Chachamim, the consent of the partner for his partner sending truma for everyone is contingent on the fact that he took an appropriate amount. He took at least 1/50th. He took an average person's. If that is what he did, that means he did at least an average amount. That's considered an appropriate amount. And then he's okay what his partner did. His partner took at least a 50th. Then he's okay. His partner proficient, even, forget it. I mean, again, this person, we don't know if he's proficient or not. So although proficiency is not, knowing his proficiency isn't going to make a difference in his consent, but his consent, it does make a difference. It is dependent on how much he gave. If he gave the appropriate amount, then we can presume that he consents. Otherwise, we cannot presume he consents. And if he didn't do the proper amount, he did a 60th, let's say, then it's going to come out that we cannot presume his consent because he didn't take a proper amount, and therefore the first truma is half truma and the second truma is half truma. That's one explanation that's given. The other explanation is that when the Mishnah says that the first one separated according to the amount, it means the first one separated according to the amount that the second one did, right? The case here is that one person goes and separates truma for both. The second one then separates truma, not knowing that the first one separated truma. If it comes out that they both separated the same amount, if when the first one separated his truma, it comes out he separated the same amount the second one separated, then we can presume that the second one consents to the first one because he took the amount that the second one wanted to take. But if they don't work out together, if the second one takes out a certain amount and it's not the same amount as the first one, then we cannot presume his consent. We can only presume his consent according to this explanation. We can only presume that the second partner consents to the first partner's truma only if it comes out at the end that they take the same amount. But if it comes out they're taking different amounts, then we cannot presume that the second partner consents to the first partner's separating because they didn't separate the amount that he wanted. And in that case, it's going to come out that both of their trumas that they separate are going to be truma in the sense that half is truma, half of it is not truma, as we have in Rabbi Akiva's case. So those are two explanations in Rabbi Yossi. But again, Rabbi Yossi is not arguing in the Chachamim. He is qualifying what the Chachamim say. Okay. We are now up to mitzvah tzad gimel, mitzvah sloisase sholecho b'sar behema v'chaya hatameyim. This is commandment 93 in the Chavetz Chaim's counting here of the mitzvahs, his listing of the mitzvahs, and now it's a prohibition not to eat the flesh of non-kosher animals. Shenamar, as the pasuk states, "Azeh lo yiseichlu," you shall not eat this. And then the Torah tells us which animals should you not eat. Now, it doesn't go by species, it lists species which ones, but rather it gives a rule. It gives examples for the rule, but it gives us a rule, and that is any animal that does not chew its cud, which means that after it chews out it and swallows it, brings it back up and chews it again. The Eidamafris paras doesn't have split hooves. The hooves have to be completely split. Hutame, that is a non-kosher animal, and that's what this prohibition is going on. You shall not eat these means you shall not eat the animals that don't have these two signs of chewing its cud and having split hooves. The ha'eichel kazayis, one who eats the volume of an olive, whether we're talking about a domesticated type animal or a wild animal, but each one of them is tamei, meaning it's not kosher. Doesn't mean ritually impure here. Here it means tamei as in non-kosher. Like it, if he eats the kazayis from these animals, he gets lashes. Now, Sar Adam, who be'isser, not a pleasant discussion, but basically human flesh, is forbidden, but it's forbidden by what we call an isser aseh, a prohibition that is derived from a positive statement. Sheni b'chlal zeis hachaya, because the Torah also tells us zeis hachaya, this is the living animal, these are the living beings that you shall eat from. It talks about the animals who chew its cud, have split hooves, And the ones that don't, it talks about the birds and it talks about the fish. Don't talk about man, about human beings. And therefore, when the Torah says this is what you can eat, it didn't mention man. So it's derived, it's understood from a positive statement, what may not be done. That is not considered a full-fledged prohibition in the sense when the Torah tells you not to do something, because we said before, the Torah says not to eat non-kosher meat from an animal. You can get lashes for it if you eat the volume of an olive. That will not happen if you were to eat a volume of human flesh. It's prohibited, but it doesn't have the status of a prohibition, of a lot of an every commandment to have the punishment of lashes. Anything that comes out that from a non-kosher species, like the milk of non-kosher animals, whether they be domesticated or wild, they are now forbidden from the Torah to eat. Something that comes out of the animal, something that's produced from the animal, that is something that is not kosher like the animal itself. But here's an exception. Honey, or here's something different. Honey, bee honey, wasp honey, mutter is permissible. Why? They don't emit the honey from their bodies, right? That's not what they do. They process the honey they process it, but that's not something that comes out from their body. Milk is part of the animal's body, comes out of the body. It develops in the body and it comes out of the body. Honey of a bee doesn't work that way. Again, they expel it, but it's not something that essentially emits from their body itself. Therefore, it's permissible, even though the bee is not kosher. Chalavisha, mutter, woman's milk is permissible. It's forbidden for an adult to basically nurse from a woman. Milk that comes from a non-Jew, that a Jew did not see him milk the animal, also it's forbidden. We are concerned that perhaps he's going to mix in non-kosher milk. And therefore, we have to be able to see, there has to be someone there, or at the very least, we have to know somehow or another know for sure that this non-Jew is not mixing in non-kosher milk. Ugevinas akum, and cheese produced by a non-Jew, minatara mutter, from the Torah law is permissible. Why? There's no concern that the cheese was produced from milk of a non-kosher animal. Milk of a non-kosher animal does not become cheese. Our sages forbade the milk of a non-Jew for many reasons. So even in a case by cheese where non-kosher milk wouldn't become cheese, so you know it's coming from a kosher animal, nonetheless, if it's been made by the guy, midrabanan, they forbade it for many reasons. This applies in all places at all times. Both by men and by women. Have a great day. Morning.